What is going on? Welcome to the Second of Strength podcast. I'm so grateful, as always, that you're here and you're willing to spend a few seconds with me. I believe that seconds are the most valuable pieces of time that we have because I believe in 1 second of strength, you can change everything in your life. So I'm grateful you're here. If you haven't done so already, I appreciate it if you go and subscribe to the show as well as leave a rating and review. Helps get the show out to more people so we can help more people. But today, we are going to talk about something that happened over the last week. And I'm going to give you 4 specific ways that you can react or I don't know what the right word is, that you can, when something bad happens, which bad things happen to all of us, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do in the moment? How are we going to react? And I'm going to give you 4 tips that I believe will help you when something bad happens. And over the last week, something bad happened to me, to us, to my wife and I. So we were last week on a drive to the airport at 3 a.m. on our way to our anniversary trip. We are celebrating 20 years of marriage, which is incredible. She is phenomenal, and I'm just blessed that she has decided to stick with me for 20 years. And so we were driving to the airport at 3 a.m. to catch an early flight so we could go spend some time together in the Dominican Republic. And we're driving down the road. I am fairly alert for 3 in the morning. I'm paying attention to the road. We live in a mountainous area in Utah, and so there are often animal, deer, different things that are crossing the road. So I'm aware of that. At 3 in the morning, I'm paying attention to the road. And as I'm driving down the road, about 70 miles an hour, the next thing we saw was right in front of us, there was a moose. And if you've never seen a moose up close, they're large. They are not small animals. And this, fortunately, happened to be a smaller moose, a young moose. But when you are in a sedan, I drive a Toyota Camry. When you are in a sedan and there is a moose in front of you, it is not small. It took up the entire view of that we could see. And so driving down the road at 70 miles an hour, all of a sudden, right in front of us, there's this moose, and I hit the brakes as quick as I could. I swerved to try and avoid it, and I couldn't. And so we hit this moose going about 60 miles an hour. The moose flipped up onto the hood of the car, into the windshield, up and over the car, and there we were. You know, we just kind of this traumatic event. And you know, the reality is, over the last week and a half since this happened, you know, there probably is a little bit of trauma, a little bit of PTSD that my wife and I are having of, you know, every time we close our eyes, we see this giant moose and kind of the impact. The moose, when it hit the windshield, it didn't break the windshield. It smashed the windshield, but it didn't come through, which is fortunate because it would have been on the passenger side where my wife was. And I'll try and put I don't know how to do it, but I'll see if I can put a picture of this in the show notes so you can see what this car looked like when we're done with it. But the car's going to be totaled. But you know, when bad things happen, the question is, what are you going to do about it? And what is the response that you have in the moment? I want to really focus on that, because whether you are driving down the road and an accident happened or some other traumatic event or something happens to you, and let's face it, bad stuff happens in this life. Life is not always, you know, rosy and rainbows and all the happy things that we would love it to be. And, you know, quite frankly, the bad stuff makes like the good part of life so good. And so, you know, but in the moment, what are you going to do? And so what happened after we crashed, my wife asked me after, you know, if I was nervous, if I was anxious, you know, what my reaction was. And I wasn't. I was very calm. I was cool. I was collected. You know, she was, you know, very anxious and, you know, shaky after it happened. And I was fine. And I've thought a lot about that over the last week and a half of why was I in that situation able to stay so level-headed? And I think that a lot of it really comes down to the mindset work that I've done over the last, you know, handful of years, multiple years, dozen years. And when I think about that, I really boil that down to a handful of different things that I want to share with you, because I do think that no matter what you go through in life, these 4 things are going to help you. And so the first one is I have made it a a mindset shift in my life to always focus on the next best solution. So I just call it next best. And what is it that happens next? And I think that in any moment, we can react to what's going on, but we have to learn to not overreact. Overreaction is emotional in my opinion, but we want to assess the situation, assess what's actually happened, and then decide in that moment, what is the next best thing that we need to do? What is the next best solution? What is the next best option that we can take? And then take that option. In the moment, as this moose is craning into our car, it doesn't do me any good to have a over the top reaction. And thank goodness that it wasn't worse. We could have been killed. We could have been, in the hospital. It could have been a whole lot worse than it ended up being, and just really no real damage to us, but only damage to the car. And so, I'm sure if it would have been bodily injuries or things like that, we probably would have reacted a little bit differently, or taken a different next best reaction. But in this situation, for me, I didn't react in the moment, or I didn't overreact in the moment. I just reacted. What's next best? What do I do? I recognized that the car was still able to drive, that I was still able to move. And so we were able to get the car, turn around, drive back home. While I'm driving, I'm thinking about the next best. Okay, if we can get the other car, we can drive to the airport. Then when we get to the airport, we're not going to have much time. So I'm going to drop you off to check in your bag. You can get through security. I can make it through a little bit quicker with TSA pre-check. Like, here's the next best scenario. And so just thinking about what is the next best thing that you can do. And I think when you take the next best mindset in your life, it prepares you for what is coming, and enables you to always be prepared in the moment, because you know that you have a next best mentality. You know that you're going to be able to think into the future of what you need to be doing, so you can always set yourself up for the next success. And so that is the first thing that I recognized when this happened. I had a next best mentality, and it's something that you can do as well. The next thing is, and a habit that I've worked really hard on over the last few years, is focusing on the good. I have a saying, I've said it before on the podcast, I'll say it again. I call it all good things. That no matter what happens to me in this life, good, bad, you hit a moose, you don't hit a moose, whatever it is, whatever happens, you can always, I call it all good things. And I just recognize that there is so much more good. And there's a quote, I don't know if I've said it on the podcast before, but there's a quote, I know I've posted it on social media, but the secret to happiness is to count your blessings while others are adding up their troubles. I've got a problem here. My car is totaled. I have to find a new one. I've got to do all this stuff to do it. I've got to deal with insurance. Like, there's a bunch of problems, a bunch of troubles that are adding up. But in the moment, we chose to count our blessings. We chose to count that we were alive, that we didn't have, different injuries that happened to us, that the car still moved, that the airbags didn't deploy, that we were able to turn around and drive and get back to our other car, that we were still able to make it to the airport and make our flight with about 30 minutes to spare. Like, there were so many good things that we were able to count those blessings, that it made it so we didn't spend our time counting our troubles. And I think that so many people in this life have this victim mentality, that everything happens to them, and like the world is falling apart and everything's bad and everything happens to me, and whoa. And we've got to stop. We have to focus on the good. We have to focus on the blessings, because there is always going to be bad that happens. And the more time we spend dwelling on it, the less happy we are. And I just think that's a simple fact. And so wherever you're at in life right now, no matter what is going on, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how painful it is, no matter what the challenge is, focus on the good. Focus on the blessings. Find your silver linings. Find the pieces of joy that you can find in the midst of the darkness. And when you do that, it will change your mindset around everything. So when bad stuff happens, focus on the good. Count your blessings, and I promise it will help you make it through those hard times in a way that, look, you got to go through the hard times anyway. You got to go through them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can't pass by them. You can't skip them. You have to go through them. It's better to go through them with a mind of gratitude, a mindset of gratitude, counting your blessings, than just dwelling on the problems. Because I've also learned in life that the more we dwell on the problems, the longer the problems remain. The more we dwell on the problems, the longer the problems remain. The more we dwell or count our blessings, the shorter the problem's duration is. That's the fact of it. So that's the second thing. The third thing is prepare now. Look, you have to recognize that bad things are going to come your way. They just are. Bad things are always going to happen. But you have to prepare your mind now so that you're ready for the future. Are you doing the work, putting in the time, putting in the effort to work on your mindset, to strengthen your mental health, to do those things now so that when bad things happen, you're ready to take them on? Because if we're starting from a place of deficit, or starting a place of negativity, or starting from a place of struggle or victim mentality always, when bad things happen, it makes it really hard to rise above it. So we have to learn to prepare our mind now. One of the things, a very simple thing that I've always told my kids from a driving perspective is that that your safety is more important than the safety of the animal or the safety of the car. And so I've always just said, don't swerve for animals. You can maneuver a little bit if you can, but don't swerve for animals. If I would have swerved too much from this moose, we could have driven off the road, down a mountain, flipped the car, like worse things would have happened. So the simple preparation there is don't swerve for animals. And my kids don't like that because I also don't swerve for birds or anything like that. And I have hit a couple of birds in my days, but I just don't think you should swerve for animals. So that's a preparation that you should have. You won't be ready in the moment if you're not preparing yourself now. So if you think about it, like if I asked you to come over to the house and say, hey, I need to move this table. Can you help me? And you were like, yeah, no problem. I'll be right there. And when you got there, you did 10 push-ups and you were like, all right, now I'm ready to go. Well, doing 10 push-ups, like before you have to lift a heavy table, isn't going to help you lift the table. If you have been doing push-ups for weeks or months or always been exercising and working out, then when it comes time to lift the table, you'll be strong enough to lift the table. And so that's a simple reminder that you have to prepare yourself now for those hard moments. Prepare yourself and recognize that those things are going to come. And what is the prior decision that you have to take? My father-in-law always says, prior proper planning prevents poor performance. Well, what is the prior proper planning that you're going to do? What are you going to choose? If you get knocked down in life, are you predetermined that you are going to stand back up? If you fail at something, have you predetermined that you are not going to dwell on your failure and that you're going to continue to push so you can find your successes? If you are preparing yourself now, it makes it a whole lot easier to choose the right response, or maybe that next best response that we talked about earlier. It's a whole lot easier to choose it in the future. So prepare yourself now. Prepare your mind now. Get ready for the bad times. And that doesn't mean dwell on them. It doesn't mean focus on them. It doesn't mean think them into existence. It just means be prepared with what your response is going to be so that when you're ready, and when something happens, you'll be ready. And so for me, hitting this moose, I don't know if I per se, aside from saying don't swerve for animals, I don't know if I was like, hey, this is what you can do if you hit a moose. I've never thought that in my life. But I did know that no matter what happened, I was going to be able to make it through it. I was going to be able to get through it and drive through it. And so it didn't shake me. It didn't make me nervous. I didn't get rattled. I just moved to the next best decision because I have prepared my mind to do that. So that's the third thing. And the fourth thing is really comes down to pausing. So bad things are going to happen. Stressful moments, traumatic events, they are all going to happen. And you might be going through some of those things right now. And if you are, I feel for you. I pray for you. I hope that you're making it through it. But traumatic events, bad things are going to happen. And when they do in the moment, it's adding a whole bunch of stress and tension onto an already stressful and tension-filled life, right? And so now we've just got one more thing added onto us. And so when that happens, we have to... There's a couple of different ways to look at stress and tension, and both of them when something happens, there's something in psychology called problem-focused coping, and there's something called emotion-focused coping. And so if you have problem-focused coping is if something happens and you can change it, you can fix it, then you might go into problem-solving mode. The other side of that is emotion-focused coping. And when something happens that you can't change, then we have to calm down and figure out how to make the best of it. Because if we can't change it, then why would we want to dwell on it? And why we can't fix it that way. So we have to calm down and make the best of it. We have to get to a rational state. So no matter what the coping mechanism you use, if it's problem-focused coping or emotional-focused coping, no matter what it is, you have to get back to a steady state. Because when we're in a steady state, then we can assess the situation. When we're in a steady state, then we can determine what we need to do next. Because too many times, if we are really emotional, it's really hard to think logically on what the next best solution would be. And so we have to, and we can always use our 1 second of strength to do it, but we have to, in that 1 second of strength, calm ourselves down, be a little bit, just get to a steady state so that we can have a clear head, so then we can then get into the right problem mode, the right fixing mode. So this is called emotional regulation, and it's about getting to that steady state so then you can make that next choice. Now, for us, we kind of fell into this a little bit because we were on the way to the airport to go to the beach where we were going to be in a very steady state. But we actually made a conscientious decision, a choice, and I always talk about your 1 second of strength. We made a choice in the moment that even though we had this problem that we had to deal with, we were going to take the next week and we were just going to sit with it. We were just going to be even. We weren't going to let it over. We weren't going to overreact to it. We were just going to lower the stress level so that we can then think logically and rationally about what we needed to do next. And doing that gave us the time that we needed to be able to really kind of just put the puzzle pieces into place to what we're going to do next. How are we going to get a car? What are we going to do? What are we going to, what's the right approach to remedy the situation? But it comes down to the fourth one, which I mentioned, which is pausing. When something bad happens to you, pause. Don't go over the top emotional to it. Assess the situation. And when we assess the situation in that way, then we can begin to move forward with the most logical, rational choice. And that is what I would recommend whether something bad is happening right now to you or preparing for the next thing that, is likely going to happen at some point. And that doesn't mean, last week's episode or a couple weeks ago was on, anxiety and fearing the future. This isn't a, fear the future and prepare for the worst and doomsday scenario. This is just preparing your mind, getting your mind right, strengthening your mind and strengthening who you are so that when bad things happen, you can move forward and you can attack them and you can solve the problems that you need to solve. So I hope that helps you today. Again, we had a little bit of a traumatic experience with this moose that, sadly, by the way, the moose did not make it, which is a bummer. We're a big moose family. In fact, my mom has a healthy, unhealthy obsession with moose, whatever they're called. And so, and up at her cabin where they live, there's moose that we see frequently. So we have a place in our heart for moose. So it was very sad that this one didn't make it. But I'm also very grateful, like I said, that Danny and I are okay. And that, we were able to make it to our anniversary trip and everything was fine. So, but those are the four things. When bad stuff happens, what is your response going to be? And the best way to impact that and get a positive result out of any negative situation is focus on the next best solution. What are you going to do next? Assess the situation. It'll help you. Focus on the good. Count your blessings, not your problems. Number 3, prepare now. Get your mindset right so that you can be ready for the things that are going to happen in the future. And the fourth, and maybe the most important, is pause. Don't overreact in the moment. Just react if you need to, but pause, get to a steady state so that you can get to where you need to go. And I know that when you do that, you'll end up being able to handle all the bad things that come your way and overcome them to get to the next best version of you. And so I hope this helps. If you haven't already, I'd love it if you'd leave a review for the show, a rating and review, and then subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode. Every episode comes out Tuesdays. And I'll leave you the way I always leave you. Go find your 1 second of strength and be happy.